Hello, Ellie and Dobby here, and I'm dressed in my Shadowhunter dress, so I guess that means I'm talking about Lord of Shadows today. In case you don't know, Lord of Shadows is the second book in the Dark Artifices series by Cassandra Clare, though I kind of consider pretty much all of Cassandra Clare's Shadowhunter books as like one big series with like different sections of it. So in a way, it's the 11th or 13th if you count the combination novellas book. So I've read a lot of Cassandra Clare. But this is the second one in this portion of the world, which follows, I guess Emma Carstairs is technically the main character, though Julian Blackthorne is right there with her, and pretty much all of his family is as well. And if you haven't read any of the Shadowhunter books, I don't know why you're watching this video, and you should really go do that, and I recommend doing it like in order of when they were published, because especially in this series, there are some spoilers for the books that come before. Yeah, read all of them. 13 books. It's not too bad, right? In Lady Midnight, we are reintroduced to the Blackthorne family plus Emma, who we met in the last book in the Mortal Instruments series, but just a tiny bit. But in this one, we are 4 years after the big war of the Mortal Instruments, and things are starting to look a little messy again. There's a lot going on. This book was wonderful. I had one major issue with it, which I think I'll get into in the partial spoiler section, like when I talk about not really spoilers for the current book, but some spoilers for this one. I was actually surprised looking back that I hadn't given this 5 stars. Then with my friend Natasha, I was able to remember why I didn't give this 5 stars. And like, it was an issue, not so much an issue in the newest one, which I did give 5 stars to, but this review isn't about this book, so I'm gonna shut up about it. Anyway, in this one, we are back following our friends. We are seeing from more perspectives, and we're getting deeper into the story, and I just need to talk about this, okay? I just need to talk about this. I am going into my spoiler section for Lady Midnight, which is the first book in the series. If you have not read Lady Midnight yet, and the rest of the Shadowhunter books, go away and then come back, and I'm not quite getting into spoilers for Lord of Shadows yet, okay? Don't forget to subscribe. Yeah, okay. Right, anyway, my one major issue with Lady Midnight was going into it. I was expecting there to be a lot about how the prejudices towards the fairies was not okay, and it was causing a lot more issues than it was helping. And in the first one, it almost seemed like all of those prejudices were proven good and right based on the actions of the fairies that we knew and saw, because they weren't trustworthy and they were doing everything in their power to be careful, and it wasn't quite connected to the way they've been treated. The good news is that was no longer an issue in this one. There was a very clear relationship between distrust and more distrust. There was much more about how negative prejudice is. I really enjoyed it. I don't know what else I can say before I get into the actual, real, legitimate spoilers. I was so excited going into this book. I think it was probably my most anticipated book of 2017, although that's hard to say because I also read Sarah J. Maas's most recent book this month. But I loved this book. I really did. It was fantastic, and I need to talk about feels. Yeah, 5 stars, no doubt, like 98% probably. Any complaints that I've made in the past about Cassandra Clare books, which I will get into in my spoiler section as well, were not the case in this one. Well, that's not true. I do still have one complaint that I often have about Cassandra Clare books, and that's an unpopular opinion, but I will get into that one too. Anyway, I'm giving my official spoiler warning for Lord of Shadows. If you have not read it yet, go do that and then come back. Don't forget to subscribe and follow me on Twitter at ReaderGonnaRead. Bye! So, let's get into it. I was the last one in my little group of friends. We all started the book the night it came out, or the day it came out. One of my friends luckily had off work that day and was able to finish it by the next day. Another one took about 5 days, but I had a crazy week, so it took me more like 9. So I was consistently behind them, which meant I got to message them all of my reactions. So I'm going to use that to help me remember the different parts of my reactions to this book, because if I were to just talk about it right now, I would basically just be talking about the ending, which destroyed me, but I will get to that. First of all, I do need to say that I appreciated Will Herondale being mentioned in Chapter 1. He is my #1 book boyfriend, and he is my phone case, and I love him a lot, so I liked that. I loved all of the Will Herondale references, which there were a lot in this one, probably partly because Jem was a big deal in it, and partly because Kit just found out he was a Herondale at the end of the first one, and partly because they were at the London Institute, which was wonderful. Honestly, I like the Infernal Devices better than the Mortal Instruments, so I just loved the, initials on the wall, which we saw Jessamine write, and Will's name being in all of the books, and oh my god, I loved all of the throwbacks to the Infernal Devices. It was wonderful, even though it does kind of relate to my one big complaint about Cassandra Clare, but again, I'll get to that later. By the end of the first chapter, I was already like, Julian and Emma just need to figure this out and get together. I don't care. They're in love, and I don't like Emma hurting Julian. I don't like seeing him suffer, and the Mark stuff was just creeping me out, and I just needed, although I am glad, one thing, and I think they did this on purpose, at the end of Lady Midnight, it seemed like Emma and Mark were going to try to actually be together, but I'm glad that that only lasted a minute. And Emma was just like, I can't do it, there's kind of somebody else, but I'm trying to forget him, so yeah. And then Mark was like, oh yeah, that's cool, whatever, I'm trying to forget people too, whatever. But then later he finds out that it's Julian, and he's like, I can't do that to my brother, sorry, bye. Which I also appreciated. Also, I was so positive when we had seen Clare turn Jace down, I was like, no, that wasn't a real no, that was like a, no, you're joking. No way would I say no to you. No kidding. Or whatever. But it was a real no. And apparently, it's because Clary thinks she's about to die. No. You don't survive 6 of your own books only to die in the sequel series. Unless you're way, way older. No. 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 Can't happen. Sorry. Now I'm thinking about another series where something similar happened. Anyway, yeah, no, Clary can't die. It's against the rules. My rules, not Cassie's rules. My rules. So I need to talk about Diego. I honestly don't remember him that much from the book before. I remember him being called Perfect Diego, and I think Drew had a crush on him, and I know I didn't like him, but that's pretty much it. And in this one, I don't know how to feel about him. Obviously, he and Christina were dating at the beginning, and I'm like, no, this isn't gonna last. And then guess what? He has a fiance, a terrible, horrible fiance who is the most prejudiced person in the entire world and is awful. And what on earth does anyone who could possibly have even a moment with Christina see in her? I do like that that turned out to be fake. We kind of understood that better, and I wasn't sure how to feel about him because I understood where he was coming from. And I liked that the whole thing was him trying to keep the cohort away from more power and more abilities, but I just didn't trust him fully, I guess. Same thing with Jamie. I think I trust Jamie a little bit more, but I don't know about that either, but I'll get back to him in a second. I will say, I did get a little bit of a Julian and Emma makeout scene much earlier in the book than I thought, even though I'd already been starving for it at that point, but I wasn't expecting it to happen as early as it did. I do like that though, because it's realistic. They're both having these feelings. One of them is trying to hide it, but still has them. So things are gonna happen. I did like their entrance into the fairy world. We had been there before in like much smaller terms, but not to this extent. My favorite scene in The Mortal Instruments is that fairy court scene, and I loved being able to revisit that, though it wasn't quite as fun this time. I loved tortured couples, as terrible as that sounds. I think that's why I'm obsessed with Emma and Julian, because similar to the way Jace and Clary were in the first 3 books, they can't be together, but they want to be together, and they should be together, but they can't be together. And I love it and hate it at the same time because it's torture and that's drama and wonderful. I would hate it in real life, but in a book, it's amazing. I do love that series of events. I love that they each were promised something on their way in, and pretty much all of them came true in different ways than they expected. Emma was promised that she would see the face of somebody that has died, and she saw her father's face, but it was a trick. Julian was promised that he would meet someone who knew how to destroy the Parabatai bond, and he did, but it would destroy all Parabatai bonds, which I hope they don't do that. They wouldn't do that, would they? Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. They have to find a different way. Clary has to have like a rune or something. Clary can make runes. Make a rune. Christina was promised that she would have an opportunity to end the cold peace, which, debatable whether that one has fully come true or not, though I guess they were promised a solution for it, even if it's not actually going to happen, so I guess that did come true too. And Mark was promised that he would ride with the Wild Hunt again, which his, I think, came true the most sincerely, because he really did get to ride with them again. I want to talk about the relationship between Mark, Christina, and Karen. I'm loving it. I don't know how to feel about like the different parts of it. I think I'm for Mark and Christina just because like Karen still has done terrible things in the past, but now we know that he was doing that because he actually thought he was saving Mark's life. Not just wanting him back, but saving his life. So I can't hate him as much as I used to, which is kind of how all of the Blackthorns feel now as well. I like that they acknowledged that he does love both of them in very different ways, but both in very sincere ways. I don't know, I'm really wondering how that's gonna go, because I honestly can't tell. As soon as I feel like I understand it, Mark kind of says something that makes me go like, oh, well that's an interesting thought. But Christina basically told Diego that like they're over, so I don't think it's gonna be like the two of them and Mark and Karen. Part of me thinks Karen might die, but I hate when like they're only with one because the other one's dead. Similarly, I want to talk about the relationship between Ty, Kit, and Livy. So coming into this, I was all for Kit and Ty, and I think I still am. I was a little confused by the little kiss scene between Kit and Livy, but I guess they're at the age where like that's the normal thing to do. I liked that Livy, I'll talk about Livy later, but I like that Livy made it a point to say this isn't the relationship we're meant to have, we're going to be friends, and you'll always be friends with me. And he noticed that and was like, she only said I'd only be friends with her. What about Ty? Because you're going to be more than friends with Ty, Kit, okay? More than friends, because you understand him, you held him when he was breaking down, which is something that like just came naturally to you, and most people wouldn't be okay with that, and I love it. And I love that he just like went into that little pair, and the two of them have always been just together, no family, totally in there, and Kit's just like, okay, I'm turning this into a little threesome here, okay? Alright, cool. Then Magnus shows up, which, yay, I was so excited. Magnus and Alec show up with their Shadowhunter son and their Warlock son, and I still think it's a little funny, and I'm sure this was done on purpose, that the Warlock was named after a Shadowhunter that passed away, and the Shadowhunter was named after a Downworlder that passed away, and I love that. But they show up, and I love that they're a part of this now, because in the first one we really got Malcolm Fade, who turned out to be totally evil, in a kind of Magnus place. But now we get the real Magnus, which is awesome. Until we start to see that he's weak. He's never been weak. I didn't understand And I was freaking out because the unfortunate thing about having other people have read this before me is I saw people's reactions. They didn't tell me what happened, but I've seen people be like, not okay at the end of this. So I was like, does Magnus die? Because he's weak right now. And at that point, at a certain point, I was like, Magnus is getting weaker and weaker, and Clary said she thinks she's going to die. So if Magnus or Clary die, I won't be okay. I mean, if any of the important characters died, I wouldn't be okay, but Magnus has to be in every single book in, like, the Shadowhunter world, because he's the only one that can be, and I guess Tessa, but she already missed a bunch, so Magnus. Annabelle throws a trap for Julian and Emma, because she doesn't want them to take the book, but they want it to help save everybody, and not a huge deal. I'm not going to talk that much about that, actually. But I am going to talk about when Emma and Julian get in that big fight, and Emma finds out that Julian does still love her. Because they were able to burn down the church, which they only should have been that powerful if they still loved each other. So that proved that they did still love each other, even though Emma thought that Julian was over her because she saw him kiss a fairy that he thought was her. So they get into this big fight, and she's like, you still love me? And he's like, yeah, why is that such a terrible thing? Why are you so horrified that I love you? And he basically says, like, I am going to love you no matter what. There's nothing I can do to change it. So just deal with it. And she storms off. And I'm sitting here like, Emma, he just said nothing's gonna change it. You already know nothing's gonna change you, which is why you tried to make him hate you. So just tell him the truth. And then she finally does, and they're together, which should be good, except wait a second, that means they're gonna go crazy and, like, kill people they love. Which she finally tells him about the curse, which is good too. And then they come up with this big plan, and they talk to Magnus. And I need to talk about, like I said, there was a lot of similarities between this one and the Infernal Devices. And the moment when Magnus walks in, and Emma and Julian are in bed, they're clothed, but they're in bed together, and it reminded me of the moment in Clockwork Princess that is, like, one of my favorite moments ever. And I love Magnus just, like, walking in on people that shouldn't be together. That sounds awful, but I love it. Okay, before I get into the end, I need to talk about Drew being sucked into the fairy world by Jamie's pendant, because they had said that only a Rosales could be sucked in. So either they are wrong / lied to Zara to make her think she couldn't use it when she can, which I'm all for, or there's something interesting going on with Drew's parentage, which is interesting. I'm sure we will get more on that, because she shouldn't have been able to use it, but she did. Emma and Julian talk to Magnus, and Magnus says to talk to Robert, because, spoiler for Mortal Instruments, Robert's Parabatai had been in love with him, and that didn't work out so well, and you know from the Mortal Instruments that he's regretted his reaction to that, and that's part of what made him finally be okay with Alec and Magnus. So he would have some sympathy for this. Of course, Magnus didn't tell them all of that, but I knew that. So they make this plan. They're gonna exile themselves so they can, like, choose how they're exiled, and that will lessen the Parabatai bonds, and then hopefully they can figure out how to escape the curse without having to completely destroy themselves or become mundanes, which sounds all great. They go, they talk to Robert. Robert is a little confused because he doesn't know about the curse, but is like, okay, well, I'll think about it and we'll figure something out. All great. At the same time, the cohort, who is this, like, huge prejudice organization, are coming with signs wanting to be more prejudiced and make warlocks register as warlocks. Magnus is passing out, and we find out that all of the warlocks are weakening, and I'll talk about that again in a moment. So we get there, and Annabelle, who agreed to testify because Julian is awesome, freaks out when they give her the mortal sword, which, why didn't they just give it to Zara? Zara doesn't have this terrible history with the Mortal Sword. They needed to know that one of them was lying and one of them was telling the truth. If they'd given it to Zara, instead, she would not have been able to say that she killed Malcolm, and they would have known that way. Why did Annabelle have to have it? I'm mad. Like, ugh. Anyway, she freaks out. She kills Robert as Alec is taking care of Magnus. So he's taken away from Magnus, who is unconscious, to go see that his father is dead. And that is not the end of it. Then Annabelle loses it more. Emma comes to the rescue. Julian's there without anything. Annabelle's about to attack Julian. Emma takes it, destroys the Mortal Sword, which something bad has to happen from that too. And Livy comes to bring a weapon to Julian because he's weaponless. And Annabelle, having the Mortal Sword broken, is just like, well, I'm gonna stab Livy now, and kills Livy. I knew that if a Blackthorn had to die in this book, it was going to be Livy. Because, aside from Tavi, who almost died in the previous one, everybody else had uncertain relationships going on at the time. Like there was Ty and Kit, who we don't know what's going to happen there. Emma and Julian, obviously, who now even their plan went up in flames because Robert's gone and he's the only one that had the ability to go with their plan. Mark, Kieran, and Christina, and they weren't gonna, I guess they could have killed Helen, but that doesn't make sense when she just came back. And Drew, so more has to come of her with the pendant. Livy was the only one that like didn't have an obvious storyline moving forward. Like she was supposed to be parabatai with Ty, but that was almost a resolution for her. So it made sense that she was the one to die. It's just super painful. Oh, plus the fact that Ty now does have somebody else to lean on. I'm sure it's going to disrupt that relationship and push them away from each other a bit. But he will have somebody to turn to when it's all said and done. That hurt a lot, but I understand it. I will say, as somebody who has complained in the past about Cassandra Clare books not having enough death, that was not my complaint in this one at all. I think I'm gonna leave like plot-wise there. I'm going to give some more overall thoughts and some predictions about what is coming in the future. So, I talked a bit about some things that I've complained about in the past that were not issues in this book. I do want to talk about the one thing that I still saw as an issue. One of my big complaints in City of Heavenly Fire, in fact, probably my biggest complaint in City of Heavenly Fire, was that a good portion of that book, which was about Emma and Julian, seemed more like an advertisement for this series than a necessity for that one. And I love Cassandra Clare, I love her writing, but I don't like the way she uses her books as advertisements for her other books. And this one had some of that too. It sounds like a lot of the stuff with Magnus is going to be coming up more in a different series, and my friend and I made a prediction that a lot of one of the other series is going to be about Kit's parentage, so a lot of the things with the your name saved you, and a lot of that is like an advertisement for another series as well. That kind of annoys me because, I mean, I will read anything Cassandra Clare writes. I'm reading her Magisterium series with Holly Black as well. But I don't want to feel like I have to read the next one or I have completely unanswered questions. I would like to have the option to stop at the end of a series without feeling like people are just begging me to go on to the next one and read more and spend more money. Just a little thing of mine. Sorry if that's an unpopular opinion, which I know it is. I will say though, I do like that she includes things from previous books though, which I know is a little bit hypocritical. I do wish there was a little bit less running into each other, like I said, because I do think that there would be some things that would be a little confusing if you hadn't read the previous books, but like I said, I loved those things from the Infernal Devices, so I don't know. Last thing I want to talk about is some predictions for the next book. I sent a little rant of freaking out about Livy and Ty's... okay, so I also need to talk about the fact that this is going to be insane guilt for mostly Julian and Ty, a little bit of Emma too, because maybe if she hadn't broken the sword, Annabelle wouldn't have attacked Livy, although I think that one's a lesser thing. But the fact that Julian is the reason that Annabelle was there and in that position, and Ty was the reason that she came and talked to Julian and trusted him, is going to destroy the two of them because they are going to feel like they killed Livy. They didn't kill Livy. That was awful. That was absolutely terrible. And now their plan isn't going to work anymore. Anyway, predictions for the next one. So one thing is, I think that a cohort member is going to end up as the new Inquisitor, because now they need a spot to have an Inquisitor. I hope it's not Zara or her father, because, I mean, they were just proven untrustworthy, at least Zara was, so I'm hoping it's at least not one of the two of them, but I feel like it's going to be somebody, because things always have to get worse before they get better. I'm hoping that if one of them is an Inquisitor, however, they won't be the head of the Los Angeles Institute. I really hope Diana can be somehow. I know we now learned her whole backstory and that causes issues, but along with all of the warlock prejudices that we're tackling in this series, I'm hoping we can tackle some transgender ones too. And she can be head of the LA Institute, and it'll be awesome because, you know, they were okay giving Alec the London Institute temporarily, and he's number one, gay, number two, with a warlock. So, yay for, hopefully, a transgender woman being in charge of the LA Institute. So the Unseelie King has Annabelle now. I'm not sure what's going to come of that, but it has to be some big deal. He's going to kind of take over. I'm wondering if he will end up kind of taking over the Seelie Court as well, or not. Oh, I was also going to say, I'm trying to decide if the cohort is doing something to the warlocks to weaken them, or if it's Annabelle in retaliation for Malcolm attacking her, though she liked Magnus, so I'm not sure why that would happen, or if it's the fairies that are attacking not only shadow hunters by weakening them, but also warlocks in a more obvious way. I have a feeling that one's more likely. I think we're obviously going to learn more about Drew and why she was able to go to Fairyland through the pendant. We have to see Jamie again, because things aren't done with him and Drew, although there's a bit of an age gap there. I don't know, we obviously have to find some way for Emma and Julian to be together, because they're gonna be together, and their biggest plan just fell through. And obviously, if there's somebody from the cohort as Inquisitor now, that plan's not going to work. So they're going to have to figure something out. I don't know what it's going to be. I can't see either one of them either not being a shadow hunter anymore, or, oh god, I hope they don't die. I don't know. But next book's going to be rough. They're going to be trying to move on from Livy's death, but there's still going to be a whole bunch of things going on. The cohort's going to be taking over, and I am terrified. Like, it's going to feel like the 5th Harry Potter book, and I am going to feel terrible the entire book, but I'm so excited for it, even though it's really far away. Anyway, that is it. I will talk to you next time. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ReaderGonnaRead, and subscribe by clicking up here. Bye! Hey, Ellie and Dobby here. Like the video? Come subscribe. Do it right now. Click it.